What do you and Ringo do while John and Paul write songs?
We play marbles or marples.
Have you ever been called the quiet one? People think you have nothing to say, but that's just because they're not listening. Make no mistake, George Harrison was a genius, but he was like the baby brother to three massive personalities. So getting attention was going to be difficult.
What would you call that hairstyle you're wearing?
Arthur.
But in my opinion, George Harrison was the final key in making the Beatles the greatest band that has ever existed. John and Paul would have always topped the charts, but because of George, I believe they were able to obliterate them. I consider him a watchful observer, quietly taking in the whirlwind that was John and Paul. But all along, the youngest Beatle was a sleeping giant, and when he woke, he gave us songs like Something, Here Comes the Sun, and While My Guitar Gently Weeps. While My Guitar Gently Weeps is a hauntingly longing song, with a tender melody up against a driving guitar like a rattling animal in a cage. It gave us a new Beatles sound like something from a parallel universe. But its road to our ears was smothered with George's self-doubt and John and Paul's consistency in writing hit after hit. But this is a story of determination. George was studying the Chinese I Ching Book of Changes after a trip to India where he fell in love with Eastern spirituality. He began to believe in the concept that everything happens for a reason and nothing is coincidental. So George says, with this in mind, I'm gonna write a song based off of the first thing I see. He grabs a book, opens it to where the pages may lay, and reads the words, Gently Weeps, and begins writing the song. After completing the song at his mother's house, George brings it to the rest of the band. And guess what? They're too busy working on their own songs. George said they wouldn't take it seriously. He wasn't even sure if they had lifted their instruments to learn the chords. Heartbroken, he left the recording studio and said to himself, it's a shame. It's a good song. The next day, George was riding in a car with his friend Eric Clapton, whom he's had a very interesting relationship with.
And then, of course, Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
Now, obviously you've known each other
How did I get to meet him?
No, but how did you meet him? No, how did you decide?
We shared the same wife.
That's a good beginning. But
Eric, I've been friends with Eric for years, and I think I always will be. He's a lovely fella.
He asked Eric, hey man, what are you doing today? When Eric replied, nothing at all, he said, why don't you come to the studio and record this song with me? Now this is a very bold move by George, the shy one, because basically what transpired was after John and Paul kind of blanked him, George decided to ask one of the world's greatest guitarists, who is not a Beatle, to play on a Beatles record. Eric was shocked. He shook his head and said, no man, I'm not a Beatle. No one's ever played on a Beatles record, and people wouldn't like that. To which George Harrison replied, hey man, it's my song, and I want you on it. George Harrison strolls into the recording studio with the legendary Eric Clapton behind him, past John and Paul, and says coolly, hey, Eric's gonna play on this one. The rest of the Beatles, probably taken aback, were like, what the hell, Eric Clapton? They sat bolt upright and moved to position. Paul McCartney went on the piano and created a very memorable piano intro. And to the youngest and quietest Beatle in the room's delight, they began to take it seriously. And we're all very glad they did. Before I end this video, I want to thank you for subscribing and your enthusiasm. Making 400 subscribers in less than 2 weeks of these was not only surprising, but it was very reassuring, knowing that I wasn't speaking into the void. I used to post these videos in the Beatles subreddit, but that got downvoted to hell, and that's okay. In this life, Not everyone's gonna love what you do, but as George taught us, you gotta be determined about the things you believe in. I saw this kid's post on that subreddit about various Beatles albums and even solo albums that I haven't even heard of. And it's pretty interesting. For someone that age to be such a fan, it's an amazing thing, especially considering the Beatles started like over a half a century ago. I wondered what I could do for somebody else instead of the usual self-promotion. Now, he never asked me to do this, and nobody needs pity subs, and this ain't a charity, but I'm gonna leave his link in the description. Maybe you watch it, maybe you like it, and maybe if you have a chance, you could do something nice for somebody you don't know, like you guys did for me. Thanks for watching.